We're going to factor by grouping today. And so what I want you to notice is that when we're factoring, and you notice that we have 4 terms, I want you to immediately go to grouping. And so what that means is that we're going to group our first 2 terms together and our second 2 terms together, and we're going to find a common factor. Once we do that, you'll see kind of how that fits, and we can separate them out. So let's go ahead and group these. So our first 2, we have 3x to the third plus 2x squared. I'm only going to look at this first group and find the greatest common factor. Well, 3 and 2 have a common factor of 1, so we don't have to worry about that. But if I have 3 x's here and 2 x's here, the most that I can take out is going to be 2 x's without going over, right? So I'm going to factor out an x squared. What that's going to leave me with on the inside of my parentheses is 3x to the first plus 2. And so just to quickly check to make sure that we did this right, if I go ahead and kind of in my head distribute this, x squared times 3x should give me back to 3x to the third. X squared times 2 should give me back to 2x squared. And notice, other than 1, there's no other common factor they can have. So we did this first part correctly. Now, the challenge can be is when they're separated by a minus sign. So if we're separated by a minus sign with the second group, you need to factor out that negative. So if your third term is negative, you need to factor that out. So what this looks like is the largest number that goes both into 12 and 8 is 4. So I'm going to factor out a negative 4. And be careful, when you're dividing by a negative, you have to be careful with the sign. So this negative 12x divided by this negative 4 is going to give me a positive 3x. And again, a quick check, negative 4 times 3x does get me back to that negative 12x. So we know we're doing that right so far. And then finally, a negative 8 divided by a negative 4 gives me a positive 2. And again, a quick check, negative 4 times 2 does get me back to negative 8, so we did this right. Also, if you noticed, on the inside of our 2 parentheses, we have the same expression here. We have 3x plus 2. Therefore, that's a pretty good indicator that we did something right. So this is a good news, and we can continue to move on. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the factor that they have in common, and we're going to bring that straight down. So 3x plus 2. What that leaves us with are these 2 terms right here that are going to then become their own factor in their own set of parentheses. And so we have x squared minus 4. And so again, these are multiplication problems. If we were to go back through and distribute all this, we would get back to our original function. So in number 2, notice that we have an x squared and an x to the third and then a 4 and then an x. This is not in standard form, so what you're going to want to do is rewrite this in standard form. So my highest exponent is 2x to the third is going to come first, then my x squared, then my x, and then my constant. Now that you're in standard form, now you can factor by grouping. So I'm going to look at the first 2 terms. Greatest common factor is x squared. So I have 2x plus 1. Remember, anything divided by itself is 1. And a quick check, x squared times 2x gets me back to 2x to the third. X squared times 1 is x squared. So we know we've done that right. Notice how this is a plus sign, so that's good. We don't have to worry about factoring out a negative. And so we want to see that third term be positive. It just makes it a little bit easier. Greatest common factor between 8x and a 4 is going to be positive 4. So once I take out a 4 from each term, I would get 2x plus 1. How we know we did this right, or a good hint, clue for us, is that what is inside the parentheses match. All right, so the 2 terms outside of your parentheses, those that you factored out, that is going to become their own set of parentheses. So x squared plus 4 times 2x plus 1. Now, this is the correct answer, and some of you might be thinking, hold on, no, that's difference of 2 squares. Remember, there's difference of 2 squares being separated by a minus sign, but this is sum of 2 squares, and you cannot do that without getting imaginary numbers.